is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Game Informer Show, a weekly podcast covering the video game industry. Join us every Thursday for a discussion of the latest gaming news, reviews, and exclusive reveals alongside Game Informer staff and special guests from around the industry. I'm your host, Alex Van Aken, and today I'm joined by Charles Harte. How you doing, Charles?
It's a me.
It's a you.
It's a me, Charles Harte. Or should I say Charlie Day, Luigi in the Mario movie.
Perfect.
Yes, that was you?
Perfect.
That was me.
That was a very good impression of Charlie Day in the movie.
I'm not going to dare to try to do an actual impression, no.
We're rounded out this week by our online content director, live from the Mario movie red carpet, Brian Shea. How you doing?
I would have been live from the Mario movie red carpet if it was like 2 or 3.5 days ago. But yes,
okay.
I'm doing very well. How are you, Alex?
Well, I'm doing good. I want to know what it's like, being on the same red carpet as Miyamoto and Charlie Day and Chris Pratt and Jack Black. How was it? You went to the movie premiere.
Yeah, so I went to the movie premiere. I got to see the movie 3 times by the time you're listening to this.
Jeez, okay.
Once was, I guess, like 2 weeks ago at this point, because I was doing the media junket. And so I talked to Chris Pratt, Charlie Day, and Seth Rogen. You can see those interviews on the Game Informer YouTube. Mm-hmm. But before that, they were like, oh, we want to show you the movie. So they set up like a small screener for some media members. And so I went over to that. That was in Hollywood. And then a week later, I was at the premiere. And I didn't actually like man the red carpet, but I walked past the red carpet as everybody else was walking past. And I went and sat down, and then they brought all the cast in, and they walked like literally like 1 seat away from me. Like I was kind of like over by the entrance where my seat was, and
yeah, it
was cool to see like all those pretty big name stars walk in. Like Chris Pratt was there, Charlie Day, Seth Rogen, Anya Taylor-Joy, all those people were there. And then also, of course, Shigeru Miyamoto, Koji Kondo. I got to chat with Doug Bowser for a little bit, which was cool.
Oh, nice.
That was my first time meeting him. I've met Reggie before, but never Doug Bowser. So that was neat to be able to talk to him for a little bit. And then I was sitting directly behind a Backstreet Boy, which was interesting. AJ from the Backstreet Boys was sitting directly in front of me at the premiere.
I don't know which one he is.
I kept because I didn't recognize him until somebody told me who he was, and people kept coming up and taking pictures with him. I'm like, all right. And then when I was walking past the red carpet, he was walking the red carpet, and people were taking pictures of him on the carpet. And I'm like, all right, this guy is somebody, and I couldn't figure out who. And then afterwards, they're like, "Oh, that was AJ from the Backstreet Boys." And I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Why? What was he doing there?
He was there with his kids. He took his kids to the premiere. And by all accounts, he was being a very fun dad while they were waiting, because the premiere didn't start for an hour after we sat down. So it was he was entertaining them. He was dancing. He was singing. It was fun. It was all a good time. But yeah,
was he singing Backstreet Boys songs or just normal?
Just constant "Tell Me Whys." I don't know.
Yeah.
No.
And his kids are sobbing, and he's like, "Tell me why." And one of them's having a meltdown on the floor in front of him, and he just keeps hitting that one line.
I like it. It's like the thing where kids are really upset, and there's only one thing that can help them. So his kids are sobbing. He's like, "Tell me why," and they're like, and they just stop crying.
I think it was just kids songs, like songs from probably shows they were watching and stuff. But
like the Wills.
I don't know. I don't know
the Bluey theme song.
What's hot with the kids now?
Yeah,
I'm 36 years old, Alex, and I don't have any kids.
You're supposed to be on the cutting edge of this, all right?
Yeah,
you're a media journalist.
I'm not on the cutting edge of this.
Is there a Bluey video game? There should be.
I would review it. I drop everything.
I'm sure there is somewhere, right?
Yeah.
I got a press release for a Hello Kitty game recently.
Okay. There you go.
Basically the same thing.
Yeah. So how was the movie itself, Brian?
I enjoyed it a lot. I think that it is. I mean, I called this in my review that it's the best video game movie yet, and I saw that other reviews were less friendly to it, but I noticed that a lot of those came from a place of, let's talk about this as a movie first, and a love letter to a franchise second, which fair enough. That's what they're doing. That's what their job is. But coming at it from the perspective of somebody who grew up with these games and who loves these games, has been waiting for a faithful adaptation of these games. It's just like everything I wanted. It's terrific. It has a fun story. The voice actors all crush it, and there's a ton of references, both like new and old, like all the way back to like Donkey Kong, and then all the way up to Bowser's Fury. Like there's references from the entire spectrum of the franchise. Bowser's
Fury, really? That's cool.
Yeah, and it's like the audio Easter eggs, visual Easter eggs. It's all just, there's I'm not going to spoil it, but there's a lot of every scene is dense, especially near the end. There's just so many references to the games that you can pick up when you watch the movie.
That's cool.
Yeah, and the story's fun. Like it's definitely a children's movie, or a movie meant for like all ages. But I had fun with it. I've seen it more than once now, and I've had a great time with it. I liked it more my second time than I did my first time.
That's what I was just going to ask. Like, did it age well over your 3 viewings?
As of this recording, to pull back the curtain a little bit, my third viewing is tonight. So, but by the time people listen to this,
you lied. You lied.
I
is
say,
what you're saying.
No, I said by the time people are listening to this.
Shea. Oh, okay, all right.
I found a loophole. Yes, I won on a technicality. But yeah, I enjoyed it a lot the second time. I'm looking forward to seeing it a third time tonight. But after that, I think I'm good. I don't think I'll need to see it for a few months at least.
Yeah, I really want to see it. This is one of those movies I wish I was seeing opening night, because I feel like Twitter's just gonna have so many screenshots of like references from the movie. How can I ask? Because was in the trailers. They talked about it. They referenced it in our video interview with the cast. How was the Mario versus Donkey Kong fight? Was that pretty cool? Because that's kind of like pretty early on, right?
It's fun. It's it's one of the I guess better like just kind of like confrontations, and it's trying to talk around any kind of spoilers.
Sure.
But it's very fun. It has a lot of references. There's one that I caught on the second one that made me laugh pretty hard. And like not even in like that's really funny. It was just like, really, they included that in like one like just. I'll talk about it more afterwards. Sure. But yeah, it's fun, and it's a good encounter. I'm again trying to talk around spoilers, so apologize for not being the most
boss encounter. Yes,
so it's a boss fight. Yeah, It's just it's a pivotal moment in the plot. So
okay, all right.
But yeah, and it leads to probably my favorite dynamic in the movie, which is Mario and Donkey Kong's relationship.
Oh, I can't wait. I am very excited to see that movie. And I feel like this is... Yeah, go ahead. What's up, Charles?
I was going to say, just Mario is like so often like silent in games. Mm-hmm. And in this, obviously, he's like talking the whole time. How did you feel like... Did his personality come naturally to you? Like, did it feel like initially we were like, oh yeah, this is what Mario would be like?
I think that initially I was like, oh, that's Chris Pratt. Like, it was one of those situations where it was just like I just heard Chris Pratt and Charlie Day. But I also said this in my review that by the time the movie ended, I was like, oh no, that's just Mario and Luigi, because like it does sound good. Like, again, like I understand people's hesitancy towards having Chris Pratt voice Mario after having about 30 years of Charles Martinet voicing him. And of course, like I love Charles Martinet's voice acting in the games, but I just don't think that would be sustainable over the course of 92 minutes, having kind of that voice. Mm-hmm. And so I think it was kind of, it was a good idea to have a different take on it. And, I think his personality did translate well to the screen, and they did a good job of making him a more fully fleshed out character. And in talking to, this wasn't an interview or anything, but talking to Doug Bowser before the premiere out in the lobby of the movie theater, he was telling me that like that was something that they paid a lot of attention to, is like, all right, this is a character that doesn't really talk in full sentences. So like Shigeru Miyamoto and the rest of the team were very, very careful about making it so that translated in a natural way to a character that, you know, has more lines than probably any other character in the movie.
Is there ever a world that you think Charles Martinet retires and they bring Chris Pratt in to do the Mario game voices?
I don't think so. I mean, one, that would be way too expensive.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess if there's one company that could do it, maybe it was Nintendo, because like in talking to Chris Pratt and Charlie Day and Seth Rogen, they're all like big gamers from back in the day. Like Chris Pratt and Charlie Day like rattled off so many NES titles that they used to play when they were kids, like even like name dropping like Mock Rider and Spy Hunter, and then they're like, oh yeah, and of course like Contra, if you have the Konami code, and they rattled off the Konami code like right off the cuff, and that was kind of impressive that they knew the exact inputs and everything. And then you know, then of course Zelda and Mario. But Seth Rogen's also a big gamer as well. And I mean, I guess this isn't technically a spoiler because it's I don't want to say it. Never mind. I'll hold off. It's in marketing, and it's Seth Rogen has talked about it, including in my interview. But there's a fun reference that is included with Donkey Kong, and I asked how he was, because he was like, "Oh, I pushed to have that in there," and and I was like, "Well, how did you even become aware of that?" And he was just like, "You know, from being a gamer and also a fan of blank." Because if I said what the other thing was, it would very much give away what the surprise is.
I do have a question about Seth Rogen's Donkey Kong. He is now, I mean, I don't know if famously is the right word, but I've seen it making headlines and people reacting. So maybe famously, he has notably said that he doesn't do voices. If you want him as Donkey Kong, it's just going to be Seth Rogen. Did you feel like that worked throughout the film? Like, because you said like by the time you were done, Mario and Luigi, or Chris Pratt and Charlie Day sounded like Mario and Luigi. Does Seth Rogen just sound like Seth Rogen the whole time?
You know, he does sound like Seth Rogen the whole time, but it works perfectly. Like the two, like, I think that Anya Taylor-Joy is amazing as Peach, and I think Chris Pratt and Charlie Day are great as Mario and Luigi. But the two most perfect cast, also Keegan-Michael Key as Toad is fantastic. Like he went for it.
It seems like he puts on like the most transformative voice change.
He went for it probably more than anybody, aside from maybe Jack Black. Like Jack Black gives like 110% to every role that he ever does, and that comes through with Bowser. And like, but Seth Rogen is probably the most. I would say both of those, Seth Rogen and Jack Black, are the two most perfectly cast characters in the movie. Just because Jack Black, he has just like kind of like a monstrous voice to begin with, and he has like the rock singer thing working for him as well. So like it comes through in his performance of the big bad of the Mario franchise. And then also Seth Rogen, his voice just sounds like what Donkey Kong should sound like in the first place. So I mean, it all works out.
Awesome. I'm excited.
It is funny though, because in our next magazine, I wrote a feature about this with all the quotes from all the interviews. I don't know if you've seen this.
I saw the proofing page.
I asked each of those three actors how did they find the voice that they used in the movie, and like Chris Pratt gave this long explanation about how like the story influences the voice and like the situations and the motivations behind the character. Charlie Day was talking about how like the emotions of like why this character is going through this influenced his voice, and Seth Rogen just like, yeah, I only do one voice, my voice, so that's what it is.
So funny, the disparity in the lengths of quotes. That's good. Awesome. Well, Brian, not to make you keep talking, but you were out in LA and you played Jedi Survivor, correct?
Yeah, correct. So that was kind of wedged in between. I had this long week. I was in LA for 9 days, and I got out there 2 Fridays ago now at this point. So I saw the screener. Then Saturday I went, I did the media junket interviewing them. And then Monday I I interviewed the directors, which is going to be on my All Things Nintendo podcast.
For the Mario movie, to be clear.
The Mario movie, the directors of the Mario movie. Sorry, not the directors of the Star Wars Jedi. That was not until Wednesday.
Okay, wow.
Then did Universal Studios for Super Nintendo World and Disneyland for Star Wars Galaxy Edge. And then I, on Wednesday, played Star Wars Jedi Survivor. And then Saturday, the premiere. And Sunday, I guess we can talk about it now. I interviewed both Shigeru Miyamoto and Koji Kondo together about the Mario movie. So it was a long stretch in LA.
Yeah, for real.
Jam packed.
So how is Jedi Survivor?
I enjoyed it a lot. Like, I mean, I am in the camp of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order was a very good first attempt. That was, Respawn's first attempt at doing something that wasn't really like a high octane shooter. And they changed it to a third person, semi Soulsborne inspired action game starring Star Wars characters, right? So it was a very good first attempt, and like also several Metroidvania aspects. And I think they acknowledged this when I sat down with Stig Asmussen, who is the director. He's like, yeah, maybe we leaned into the Metroidvania stuff a little bit heavier than we should have in that first one. And this one feels like they struck a better balance. There's more combat options, there's better exploration, and the map is, I think, a lot smoother to navigate. I only ran into one-way slide in my entire time playing. If you remember, like that was like the big thing of like, all right, he's going down another set of slides and you can't go back up. But this time I encountered it and I was like, oh, okay, they're back. And then I was like, oh, wait, I can wall run up on the sides of the slide. And that let me get back up to the top. And it was awesome that they did that instead of, I mean, maybe there are slides elsewhere because I only played for 3 hours and it's a much longer game than 3 hours. But I think the combat feels great. The customization is vastly expanded. You can, in addition to being able to customize the components of BD1 and customize your lightsaber, you have much more customization of Cal Kestis, the main character. Going back, you could just customize his poncho in the first game. Now you can customize his beard, you can customize his hair, his shirt, his jacket, his pants. So you can actually make like a full on like your version of him. And like the footage that we showed on the new gameplay today on Game Informer's YouTube, there's actually like a mullet that you can give him. If then it's all like unlockable stuff. Like you can buy customization options from the shop. You can find them out in the world. So like there's incentive to explore as well. And
I want to see the moment where like Cal is exploring like, I don't know, Hoth, and he like finds this treasure and it pops up and it's like mullet unlocked. And it's like, hell yeah.
No, you get that at the Country Western bar.
Oh yeah, true.
Sorry, Country Western Cantina.
Yes.
Now I need to hear a country western remake or remix of the Cantina song from Star Wars.
Yeah, that's funny.
So the majority, or I guess the entirety of my gameplay took place on this planet called Kobo, or Kobo. I don't know which way it was pronounced, but you're out there finding an outpost and searching for Grease, who was the four-armed guy that was on your ship in the first one. And you're trying to get a part to fix your ship, and then like some stuff happens that I'm not allowed to talk about, and it ends up kind of setting things in motion for the story. And like you start meeting all these new characters and like building out your outpost essentially. And there's a lot of upgrades to the combat, and one of those is the addition of like more stances. So in the first one, there were two primary stances. There was the single saber, and then there was the double-bladed saber, like kind of like the Darth Maul style lightsaber stance. This one, at least in my gameplay session, I got to use the dual wield, where he just has two single lightsabers. And then so like the single saber is like a balanced stance, and then the double-bladed is like crowd control, and then the dual wield is very offensive. And then there's also one where he has one lightsaber and a blaster. I didn't get to play with that, but I saw like the gameplay designer did like a combat demonstration for us at the end of the play session, and he was using that, and he was doing some crazy stuff with it. So I'm looking forward to playing with that. And then there's one other that I don't know if we know about, or if maybe I'm just blanking on which one it is, but it all feels really good. And the puzzles like out in the environment feel good. Like there was only a couple times I really was like, what do I do here? And then like the answer is usually just do a Jedi, and and like you use the Force to pull a thing out of the wall, or push a block around to let you get higher, or look for like a vine or a cable that's falling, so you could force call it to your hand and Tarzan over to the other ledge. But yeah, it's a gorgeous game as well, and I'm really looking forward to playing it later this month.
Yeah, I can't wait to play it. Charles, what are you thinking?
I'm really excited. I replayed the first game in like late January, early February, being like, yes, the sequel's coming out in March, and then it got delayed, so I was like, but the thing I remember going back to it was like by the end of that game, you have a wide arsenal of like, you can force push and force pull. You got these lightsaber things, but starting at the very beginning, it's like surprisingly sparse, and I feel like feels more Souls-like because it's like you can kind of like attack and dodge, but there's not that many abilities. And I am excited to hear like you talk about like there's just so many new like combat things. Like that's really exciting to hear, because that was one of the most fun parts of the original, and to hear that's been like expanded. Also, the like I am really just a sucker for like alternate outfits in a game for whatever reason, and I feel like I played through the first one being like, maybe this will be the poncho that I really like, and it just kept not happening. And in this one being like, oh, it's like outfits, like this is a new jacket.
Yeah,
I absolutely accidentally made my Cal Kestis look like Mario during my play session. I didn't even realize it until I was in a wall jumping sequence where you're just kind of jumping between two walls that are next to each other, and I was like, oh, that's Mario, because I had him wearing blue pants, blue jacket, and then a red undershirt, and I was like, whoops, because it's not like the outfit that I had him wearing was like, it was like a vest instead of a jacket. So I was like, whoops.
I thought you were gonna say he had overalls on. He also had a hat with a C on it. Yeah,
Cal Luigi.
I'm looking forward to this game quite a bit. I haven't beaten the first one. I know what happens, and I actually watched our Super Replay series of it. That's how I like know what happens. But I just had like I think I played it like when it was at launch, and it was a little rough around the edges, and I was kind of like put it down because I wanted to come back to it. But what I did play, I really liked the environments and the exploration in particular. So like, and I wasn't really that off put by the Metroidvania elements in the first one, but hearing that they are like a little more confident in this, whatever this new iteration ends up, like this new balance is exciting. I think whenever a studio comes out and is speaking with confidence about like, or maybe a newfound confidence, right, in like a sequel, I think that stuff's always really exciting. But hey, if it's just more of Jedi Fallen Order and it runs well, and there are deeper systems, which it sounds like by all indications that is true, then I'm very eager to play this game.
And it's exciting because it seems like they did learn the lessons that Fallen Order had. Because, Fallen Order is a very good game, and I had a great time with it. But there were things, especially with the exploration, that I was not thrilled about. I thought the mini map was a little difficult to read at times.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, it was.
But this one, from my experience of exploring for 3 hours, it felt much more intuitive. And then also, again, the worlds were designed with fewer one-way slides, which is always a win for me. But the combat is expanded, the skill trees are expanded, so it's something that I'm really looking forward to, because I want to see just how deep it is, and it seems like Respawn learned a lot of lessons from that first one.
Did you get to play with the new paraglider at all?
So I unlocked it right at the end of my session, and it's not really a paraglider that I unlocked. It was like the ability to tame animals.
Oh, okay.
And so I tamed like a bird, like a pterodactyl looking bird, and I could jump on him and glide to a destination. So that's all I got to play with. And there was also like a chocobo looking creature that I was able to ride around on.
That's cool.
But
I don't know why I thought it was just like Cal pulls out a pterodactyl or whatever out of his pocket, and glides on it like Zelda. Hearing that you have to like tame the animals, that's really cool. To be honest, I'm kind of like going into this as with as little knowledge as possible. Like I saw what I wanted to see, and I've kind of tuned out of the marketing beat until it releases. So, this info you're sharing with me is like new to me. So I apologize if it's already known that animal taming is a thing in the game, but that's super exciting.
Yeah, and you can do some stuff with the mind using the Force. Like you can also confuse your enemies to like fight alongside you temporarily, which is cool.
I have seen that. Yeah, that is cool. Did you get to play with that?
Yeah, so there was a Bile Maul who was like this big like orange creature that like can roll over top of you or like throw up like acid on you.
Yeah.
And there were a bunch of stormtroopers, and I was like, I confused the Bile Maul to attacking them, and he basically cleared all of them out but one before they took him down. And I was like, oh well, this is easy, and then took out the stormtrooper that was left.
That's cool.
So it's effective if you use it right, but it's also helpful in evening the odds. Even though like you're a Jedi and there's a stance specifically geared towards crowd control, it still always helps to have a friend.
Absolutely.
Brian, did you ever play?
Wistfully.
Did you ever? We cut to a montage of pictures of Brian in LA by himself,
just sitting on Santa Monica Pier, looking at the sun.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, did you ever play The Force Unleashed?
Yeah,
back in the day.
That was the best Star Wars game before. I mean, I guess maybe Battlefront, the original ones, but that was the best action Star Wars game before Fallen Order.
I think there's like mind controlling in like the second one like that. That's what that reminded me of. That was I had my two favorite like Nintendo games on the Wii back in the day was Spider-Man Web of Shadows, which is I think objectively a bad game, and Star Wars The Force Unleashed, which is just a wild game. And this being I think 2018 we got Spider-Man. 2019 we got Jedi Fallen Order, and I was like, this is it. This is all I need.
This is what you wanted when you were a kid.
Exactly. So, and just hearing all this stuff, especially like the dual lightsabers, I'm like, that's what I wanted.
And it's cool that this is all canonical too. So it's like the guy's a real guy too. Like the guy who plays Cal Kestis is that's what he looks like, and he's a real actor.
Monahan.
So, yeah, Cameron Monaghan. I interviewed him over at the Game Awards, but also he was just they had an after party for the event, and he was just like hanging out there, which was kind of cool. But it's like, okay, yeah, that's Cal Kestis. Like we could have him in like a show. Like if there was like, I was thinking like maybe he would show up in the Obi-Wan show. Unfortunately, he never did. But that would have been a cool like little nod to the. I mean, I guess this is a little bit later than the Obi-Wan show. I think takes place. Maybe it's not. No, the Obi-Wan show takes
around
place
there. Yeah.
But yeah, so it would have been cool to see like him show up in any kind of live action thing if they are in fact making this one streamlined timeline where it's like kind of like what DC's purporting to doing, where they're like, oh yeah, like the games and the movies and the TV shows are all like one cohesive story. Like if that's truly what Star Wars is doing by saying like, the books and the video games are all canon, then I could see a world where he pops up at some point.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I mean, was he in Gotham? Is that what he was in?
He was the Joker.
Oh.
Or sorry, no, his name was Jerome. My cousin, he doesn't do it anymore, but he was briefly like a up and coming actor in LA, and he got a role in an episode of Gotham. And it came out on my birthday, and I was like, yo, I gotta watch this episode. This is gonna be so cool. And I had seen like some early Gotham, but not most of the middle Gotham. So I watched this whole episode I had barely any context for, of Cameron Monaghan. Like he gets really mad and he pours some like a hot soup on this guy's face. And it was like one of the funniest viewing experiences I had just from purely not having any context. And my cousin shows up literally in like the second to last scene. His name is Youngster on Roof. And like everyone's about to get mind controlled to jump off a building. And then Jim Gordon's like, you can't be mind controlled. Like the clause is you can't save yourselves, but you can save each other. So then like him and Harvey Bullock like stop each other from jumping. But he has like a combined like 5 seconds of screen time. Anyways, Cameron Monaghan has
shout
a
out to
special
Youngster on
spot.
Roof, your cousin.
Yeah.
Is that his legal name as well? Youngster on Roof?
His name's Eric. He's cool.
Yeah, Youngster on Roof as
Youngster
himself.
on
That's
Roof.
funny, Brian. We
But
gotta
yeah.
watch Gotham, I guess.
Just for those 5 seconds, or
Yeah.
for Cameron Monaghan.
Both,
Cameron
you
Monaghan.
know, both equally impressive performances, I would say.
By the way, I did ask him at the Game Awards what character in Star Wars he would like to see Cal Kestis fight, and his answer was he wanted to fight Jar Jar Binks to the death, and specifically mentioned smashing him over the head with a giant boulder.
Whoa! Whoa!
All right, Cameron, come on, man. That's
What an answer!
it's violent.
He
man.
doesn't want any force powers. He says he wants it just like hand-to-hand combat. He just wants it like
with Jar Jar Binks.
yes, with Jar Jar.
Here's the thing: is I don't know if he had no force powers and no lightsabers. Jar Jar Binks a
Listen.
feisty guy.
Jar Jar's that guy, you know.
He's got hands.
he does have hands.
He's also got like a luck stat through the roof of
He
like you
does,
could
yes.
try to swing a punch at Jar Jar and he'd be like, and then trip and accidentally knock you out. I don't know. He's really good.
Yeah, I
It's
agree.
really good.
He's really good.
Can you imagine being a character that got killed by Jar Jar Binks?
I mean, Charles said it best. His luck stat is through the
His
roof.
luck stat's through the roof. Do you know the Darth Jar Jar theory?
Oh yeah.
What?
So there's a theory
Oh, you don't
people
know
have
this?
that
No, I've never heard this.
that Jar Jar Binks was like the big bad of the prequel trilogy, and his like goofiness was all like a ruse to be like, oh no, I'm just some silly guy, but like secretly, like he does all these great things where it's like, oh no, he's actually got like some serious power. But then the reaction to him was so bad, people say they like changed it and they're like, nah, he's not relevant anymore. They just made it something else.
Hmm.
There are YouTube videos that are like 40% convincing on this topic.
It's the
Fair.
exact amount of percent. I'm not convinced, but I'd like to be.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
you really believe hard enough, you can be convinced.
That's like the motto for whenever I like write a video essay. It's like 40% convincing.
40%.
Well, Shea, we're going to come back to you in a little bit to talk about MLB The Show, but I wanted to talk about Dredge, which is that new horror fishing game. I want to pull up the publisher and developer info just to make sure I can shout them out appropriately. Developed by Black Salt Games. Is this self-published? Published by Team 17. Okay, yeah.
This game looks
but-
awesome.
Yeah. So it's a fishing. Yeah, it's a fishing game, but like with a twist. So number one, like you have like if you've played a fishing game before, you know, if you played Stardew Valley, that's like a big part of the mechanic is like you're driving around in this boat and you are stopping at fishing holes and you're completing these mini games, these fishing mini games to you know, catch fish. And that kind of expands itself in a number of ways, but that's like, you know, the first hour of the game, that's kind of what you're doing. And at the start of the game, you are this fisherman who has been washed up. You kind of get stuck in this fog at the beginning of the game and you run into a giant rock and your ship is capsized, but you wake up and you're in this new town, which is like part of the island you ran into on your ship. And it's very much a Tom Nook situation where the mayor's like, hey, I'm going to give you this boat and you're going to fish and you're going to give me, you know, money from your fish sales to pay off the loan. Right. But you paid it off very quickly. Like I think I paid it off in less than an hour. But like that is your first kind of motivation to get out into the ocean and you know, learn the systems and all that. But yeah, effectively, like there is a network of islands that you were kind of doing tasks for and errands for, while also catching new fish and selling it to upgrade your boat. So like your boat has, think of like almost like the Resident Evil 4 like attaché case, where like it's like this inventory mini game a little bit where you, okay, if I want to fit this in my inventory, I've got to move stuff around. It's kind of like that with your boat. except there are certain slots on your boat's inventory that are taken up by like your engine, your lights on your ship, your different fishing rods. And let's say you want like you start off in the game with like one engine, right? But you could theoretically, by upgrading your ship, add like several engines to your ship to make it go like really fast. Or you know, you could if you wanted to go out at nighttime and fish in the fog, which is like really dangerous because there's a panic system where you'll start to hallucinate and you'll like run into imaginary obstacles that you're making up in your mind and you'll damage your ship. So it's like really bad to be out at night. But if you want to do that, you can upgrade your ship with more lights on it so you can see further, right? And it's a really fun customization system that also plays into the fact that your whatever customizations and upgrades you're adding to your ship are affecting, you know, the storage options of, you know, actually having fish like in your inventory. So it's a really fun balance of, you know, do I want to be more efficient? Do I want to have more room for fish? And as you go, you eventually get like big upgrades. Like I just unlocked the piece of equipment that is the game's namesake, the Dredge, which allows me to go and check out shipwrecks and get like wood and scraps and bolts of cloth, essentially like these resources. And I am using that I just helped a lady. There's one lady on this island that she hated where she lived. And so I had to go to a new island and give her the resources to build a new dock and a new life. And so as you're building that out, you're building a new town that you can then go and interact to. And different towns on these islands have different, you know, one town might have a trader who really likes obscure treasures. And so if you find those in the ocean, you're going to go to him and, you know, deal with him. Whereas another place might, you know, have somebody who is purely like, I've got, you know, I need like some squid and I need some eel. If you can bring me that back, you'll get double the pay. So that's kind of like your motivation for getting started in the game and like the first few hours, but slowly and slower, or more quickly, I guess, there is like an underlying mystery at play. That is, and I haven't uncovered it. It is kind of where the horror aspect of the game comes in, where you'll start, I'm this fishing hole. Suddenly I've like caught this very mutated, ethereal fish that I've never seen before. What's this about? Right. And then, you know, the plot slowly thickens. And there is definitely some like occult presence, occult energy going on here. And that is kind of like one of the central mysteries of the game, and becomes like, you know, one of your main missions to figure out. But it's a lot of fun. I thought this was going to be a game that I picked up and played for an hour, and I'm like, oh, cool, that was like really neat. And I've like had my taste of it, and I'm good, right? It has become the game that I'm like at nighttime, I gotta log on, I gotta play more. It just has really it's hooked me, and I really, really like it. I know you said you were interested. Have either of you gotten to play this yet?
I've not. I'm looking up. It says the main story is 8 hours, but if you do all the side stuff, it's about 11 and a half hours. So that checks out. That's a pretty substantial experience. But this is a game that, you know, it caught my eye when the trailer first hit, and I was like, all right, well, that looks like it could be really cool, but it also looks like it could just kind of get lost in the shuffle. But it seems like people have really latched onto it. Like the reviews are phenomenal. And that's what ultimately led to me downloading it on my Switch. And I just haven't had a chance because I've been so busy with stuff from my trip that I just came back from.
That's fair. I will definitely say, I think you guys should try to prioritize this one. It's equal parts relaxing. It's just like one of those games that you get into a rhythm and you're doing your errands and suddenly 2 hours have passed by. And when you're not doing that, you've got this fairly intriguing mystery that you want to help solve. And yeah, it's really effective. I think there's the way that they play with the mechanics in the game, and like they do some unexpected stuff that I wasn't expecting in terms of like how you're managing your inventory, how you're upgrading your ship. It's just very clear that like they had this idea as designers and just really thought of a lot of different ways that are pretty small changes, or small interactions with their core systems. But like, it's just a really great example of having a solid idea and exploring it in its entirety. It's a really cool game. Again, for listeners, it's called Dredge, and Dredge. I'm playing on my Steam Deck. It sounds like it's on Switch as well. I don't know. Let's see. I'm looking to see where else it's at. It might just be like on all platforms. I'll try to figure that out while we talk. But yeah, I definitely recommend it. It's very cool. I dig it, and I'm excited to keep going.
It is on all systems. It is on
cool.
PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, Steam, and GOG.
Oh,
so
okay.
if you don't want to get it on Steam, it is on GOG as well.
Cool. But yeah, it runs great on Steam Deck, by the way. And I really like the art style as well. It's got a very good water shader. I love water shaders in video games, and it's very good, which is important since it's a game all about water. You have to have your water looking good. But yeah, I'm really... What's up?
Kyle seemed to indicate, because he's been playing it on Switch, that it runs pretty well on Switch as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I am really impressed by like the ways that the towns grow. It's a really effective loop for like wanting to come back and invest in a certain town and invest in your ship and have it all grow and expand. It's a good loop. So check that out.
Yeah, I'm excited to check it out at some point once life calms down a little bit.
Absolutely. Charles.
Yeah. Yes.
You have been playing the April Fool's game of the year.
Yes, of the year. Yeah. I don't know if there are any other April Fool's games, but yeah, no, I'm playing The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, I believe is the title of the game. Yep. Yeah, it was
a great way to get me to check out your Sonic game.
Yeah, the trailer is really good. It's like we've gotten lots of feedback about Sonic over the years, and we've finally taken into account. He's dead. And the game, it takes place. You play as, it's kind of like an Ace Attorney style. It's like a visual novel, but you have like evidence and you interrogate people. And it starts out, you make like a player character who's like helping out on this train. And it's his first day, and there's this, party that comes in, and I guess they're doing some kind of murder mystery game. And then he's like, wait a minute, is that Sonic the Hedgehog? Like the guy that saved the world, Sonic the Hedgehog? And it is actually like a really funny perspective of like a common person that lives in the Sonic universe to be like, wow, these are some big time celebrities. But yeah, I mean, I haven't played that much of it. I played like maybe an hour, like on like while I was eating lunch the other day. But I don't think there's much more than that. I think it's like 2 hours long. And the game is that it's a murder mystery party. So everyone's got their like assigned roles. Like Knuckles is dressed up as the sheriff, Tails is dressed up as the detective, and then everyone's got like little personality cards that no one else gets to see, but it says like what your role in the murder mystery party is. But early on, there's like a train, not a crash, but it like lurches forward really fast, and then you go and find Sonic, who's like the murder victim. But your player character's like, man, Sonic, he actually seems like he's not doing that well. And everyone's like, ha ha ha, oh, it's just the game. I'm sure Sonic's fine. And I was like, I don't know if Sonic's fine, actually. I mean, he's probably not dead. That would be really funny if they did actually kill Sonic. But for an April Fool's game, like, it's it's great. Like I would play a 20-hour version of this just in terms of like the art and like the writing is very consistently funny.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah, I was surprised by how fully fleshed out it was in terms of like a production standpoint. Like, just look, I have only seen like screenshots on Steam and stuff, but I was like, oh, they like went all out on this. I know it's not a Sonic team that worked on it, but
well, some members of Sonic team, but not like the core development team.
Okay, yeah. But the fact that Sega published this is really funny and cool. So I do want to check it out. As a guy who doesn't normally play Sonic.
Yeah. I was gonna say the music also is very good. I'm pretty sure it's all original because I don't recognize it from anywhere. But
is it like your typical Sonic music, or is it much different in tone?
It fits the atmosphere a lot better. I don't think it's. Okay. I'm not picking up on any like Sonic leitmotifs, but I think it's like just kind of classic mystery kind of game stuff.
Okay, so it's not like break beats with like synthesizers like
no.
going 100 miles an hour. Okay.
Sonic's dead.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
But yes, what was the other thing I was gonna say? Yeah, I really like playing a character in the Sonic universe that's just like a normal guy. And the conductor's like, before you know like who your guests are, he's like, listen, you got to do whatever you can to make sure these guests, feel taken care of today, because this is like our job. We are in charge of this train. We are really good to our passengers. And then like this crazy accident happens and you get like stuck in a room with Amy and Tails. And he's like, man, I don't know if things are going to be okay. And then he has like the flashback of like, well, I got to do my job. I got to be a good employee. So I'm going to help these people out. And
that's funny.
Also the implication, he's like, yeah, I mean, these are some pretty well off people. So they're paying us pretty good. And I was like, man, I never thought about the concept of like Sonic as a rich person. I just think that's really funny.
No.
Like he's just going around collecting all these rings.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're talking to, I don't know, like Knuckles and Shadow's there too. And they're not like rude, but they're Knuckles and Shadow. And just the thing of like, well, they're our passengers, so we're gonna be nice and polite. And they're also very rich people. So if you insult them, then you're not getting tipped. I don't know.
Yeah, what do you think Knuckles and Shadow tip like? 15%? 20? Do they go lower?
No, they're not 20% tippers.
No. Okay.
I think Knuckles is like I don't know. I could see an argument either way with Knuckles. I think Shadow like does not understand the concept of tipping. He'd be like, but I just paid you money. I paid for the food.
Yeah.
Why would I pay more after that?
Yeah. Do you think Knuckles is like one of the really mean customers that fill up a glass of water and then like turn it upside down with like a bunch of change on the table? Have you heard of that?
I haven't.
Thing that people do.
That would be like Rouge?
That'd be like Robotnik, maybe. I don't know.
Robotnik. Rouge, is her name's Rouge, right? Rouge the Bat. She's there also. Yeah. She like steals a 20 from the conductor at one point, and he's like, "Oh, can I have my 20 back?" And she's like, "I must have dropped it." Lots of personality, which is always good for like a murder mystery, but it's also just very fun that they're like Sonic characters.
Yeah. Shay, are you gonna play this once you have time?
Eventually, yeah, but like that's just every game that comes out. I'm like, yeah, I'll eventually check that out. But like,
well, you're like our Sonic guy,
This is specifically geared towards me, being a Sonic game. But yeah, I would like to check it out.
Nice. Do you think Sonic is actually dead?
Probably.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah, I mean, they just had this big hit with Sonic Frontiers, so now's the best time to kill off their character.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Go out on a high note,
It was one of those things. He was on the ground. There were not rings on the ground near him, which kind of implies he was out of rings. Sonic takes damage. He drops a bunch of rings on the ground. But if you're out of rings,
or Rouge already picked them up. There's already a precedent for Rouge.
True. I was not there at the time.
Taking things. Brian, let's go to you and round out the show before we get into a couple listener questions. MLB The Show, you've been playing it a bit. How is it? Are there baseballs in this one?
There are baseballs in this one. They're very good. They're good baseballs.
Okay.
And yeah, this is this one of the most consistently great annualized sports franchises. There's Madden and FIFA, people always give crap about, like, oh, it's just a roster update, which I have my problems with, because there's a lot of work that goes into each of those games every single year, and there's always changes and updates. But yeah, you can't really change the core game of football, because the core game of football doesn't change very often year over year. But yeah, they fluctuate greatly in terms of quality, though. I found, like, Madden and FIFA and NBA 2K is always just like, it's becoming more and more like a microtransaction hub at this point.
Yeah.
But MLB The Show, it does have a microtransaction area. Like, you can buy like your cards in the card collection mode, but the core game of baseball is just so sound. Like, they did such a great job with it. They continue to do such a great job with it. I mean, it's been awesome for several years now, and of course it has better years and worse years, but this feels like one of the better years. Like, the visuals are incredible, the gameplay continues to be awesome. I love how they keep building out March to October mode, which is their kind of like story driven season mode. It used to just be, you'd play one season and there would be contextual like commentary based on like if your team is an underdog, or if your team is like at the start of the season. And then, like, if you end up being good, they'll be like, oh, nobody expected the team to be this good. Or if you're bad, it's like, yeah, this is kind of the year we expected for this team. And it's still a little bit like that, but now there's like scouting, there's free agency, there's trade blocks. So it's like they're building it out almost like it's becoming like a story driven franchise mode at this point, which is great. Like, now you can like hire and fire scouts that are better at different things. So it's like, I really need a second baseman, so I need to find a scout that's really good at finding position players. Or, my pitching staff needs better. Or I just need to be more efficient with how quickly we scout these players and get accurate reads on them. So you can hire somebody who's maybe a more efficient scout than your current person, but maybe you sacrifice getting accurate reads for getting faster reads on these characters, or on these players. I did use I started my Road to the Show, which is kind of like the single player focused career mode. And you create your character, and I was like, oh, well, I usually just create myself in this mode anyway. So I noticed that they were like, hey, you can download the MLB The Show 23 companion app, and it will let you scan your face.
Whoa.
And boy, oh boy, do they not account for beards when you have the face scan technology. It took me like 12 times to get something that even like remotely resembles me. And I was like, good enough. I'm not going to mess with that, because like you just overwrite when you scan a new one. It's not like it saves like multiple face scans. So I'm like, close enough. And then like you can adjust it after the fact as well. But that's always a cool thing. But it's still technology I think we're trying to perfect to this day. Because I remember I did a feature a long time ago when NBA, I guess it was like 2K15 or 2K16, did Kinect face scanning on Xbox One. And I did one where I scanned all the Game Informer editors' faces at the office, and just the monstrosities that resulted in that are just terrible. And it seems like we still have not gotten very good at scanning it. But I guess it's better than having to create a face from the ground up, because you can tweak from there. And yeah, but this also has a special storylines mode that pays tribute to the Negro Leagues. So it's awesome to see, like, they go in, they have these documentarians or like these personalities talking about the impact of these players that were, kind of heading up these leagues that existed prior to integration of Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier. So, you get to play through these moments and these stories starring like Satchel Paige and Jackie Robinson pre-color barrier breaking. And it's really cool to see like these largely, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, forgotten players in terms of like the mainstream, because it's before they were able to play in the majors. And, you hear a lot about like, why Satchel Paige may be the greatest pitcher of all time, or the struggles that Jackie Robinson faced. And there's a lot of other players that, you can play through these moments. And like, it's less about like moments that existed in the games, because unfortunately the records aren't super great about a lot of those games back then. But you can play to the specific traits of those players. So like, Satchel Paige was known for having these different pitches that, it was basically like a curveball or a screwball or a fastball, but he had different names for them. So like you play through an inning, like calling out you call his pitch types what he would call them, which was kind of cool. Or this one time, I guess there was a story that one of them told where like Satchel Paige threw a fastball and like somebody was clocking him. They're like, hey, we clocked that at 105 miles per hour. And he was like, oh, I wish you would have told me you were clocking it. I would have thrown a little bit harder or something like that. And so you had to like strike out a batter using only fastballs. And it's a really cool tribute to that era of baseball players.
That's really cool. I'm not like a sports game player, but I never considered like a historical aspect to it. Like for some reason, that sounds really cool. Is that just in that mode, or is there like can you play in like multiple eras, or is it mainly like?
So that's the focus of this game, or at least that's a dedicated mode in this. But there are historical teams.
Gotcha.
Sure. Okay.
And like NBA also does that. Like there's a God, what is it called? But there was a specific mode where it was like you relived. It was like Jordan mode or something like that, where you relived specific iconic moments from Michael Jordan's career, and like you had to like nail certain shots or whatever in his career, and that was really cool. And like a lot of games, like MLB The Show has had these moments for a long time where it's like you step into the shoes of these either legendary players or modern players, and you have to recreate an amazing feat that they did during the game. And like, I think the earliest example they had was it like 17, MLB The Show 17, or maybe it was a little bit later, but like Willie Mays, like reliving the catch or stuff like that, where it's like you had to just like recreate these historical moments. And that's very cool. And I think they've built that out even more, where it's like now they have like people actually coming on the screen and giving you like almost a little bit of a history lesson before you have to go. Before it was just like, here's the footage of it, and maybe there'd be a guy like talking over it, but now it's like almost like a documentary the way they do it, which is awesome.
That is really cool. That's like the first time I've been interested in a sports game in a minute. My go-to sports game is NBA 2K. And
again, core gameplay on that series is amazing. And like the visuals are incredible, but they just don't know when to like pump the brakes on putting microtransactions into this $70 game.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of turned me off on it, but as much as like, I mean, I used to play baseball, but baseball has never been like my sport that I want to watch or play really. But this is like the first thing that has me actually considering playing one of these games in a very long time.
I think it's on Game Pass.
Like oh, cool. Yeah. Like anytime like there's this historic stuff, especially like stuff that is so recent in American history, in terms of the grand scheme of things, right? But even like not to go off beat, but like the Assassin's Creed museum stuff, right? And like the history tours and stuff they do. I think more games should do that, and so I love that MLB The Show is doing something similar. It's super cool.
Yeah, I love that like we're embracing the medium of video games for, like kind of historical significance, because like, Assassin's Creed Origins and Odyssey, like you indicated, like there's those kind of museum modes where you can go and actually learn a lot of stuff about that. And there were like colleges and high schools and stuff using that for teaching kids about like ancient Egypt and Greece. And it's great that we have that on the sports side as well, because there is a lot of history, and in a lot of ways, like baseball history reflected American history. And I think that's really cool that they're highlighting that.
Yeah. Well, awesome. I wasn't expecting to hear that about MLB The Show. That has gone under my radar this year.
And like as a game, it's also an incredibly solid experience so far. Like I'm having a blast with March to October. And again, I just started my MLB. I spent way too much time last night trying to make my character look like me. But I've that's always my destination mode is Road to the Show, because I just love kind of single player focused career modes. Like that's always what I spend a lot of time with. That and franchise modes are so much fun, because I love managing a team over the course of multiple seasons and just kind of like trying to build like a crappy team. Because let's be honest, most of my teams that I root for are awful, or at least they have had awful stretches. Like I'm an Orioles fan, so it does not get better for me very often. And so I love like taking the Orioles and turning them around over the course of a few seasons and making them like a playoff contender or making them ultimately a World Series contender. And I mean, I guess I can't talk too much because I'm also a Ravens and a Capitals fan. So like they've been good very recently. But you know, I'm a big Orioles fan, and that's probably the team that I've loved the longest. So it's always fun for me to take control of that team and be like, what if this team had a competent owner instead of Peter Angelos, because he's just the worst.
You and my brother Colin would get along really well. Well, actually, you and like my mom's side of my family, they're all really big Baltimore fans.
Oh yeah, that's
yeah,
awesome.
because we grew up in Virginia, so like that's the closest sports team for us, you know, as far as Major League goes. But yeah, so thank you for talking about MLB The Show, Brian. Let's get into housekeeping, and then we've got a listener email to answer, and then we're gonna get out of here. So we always start off housekeeping with a new podcast review. This week's an interesting one. Adam Mitwe emailed me their review because I guess they were having issues posting it, and they wanted us to know that to know and to share their thoughts about the show. So Adam, thanks for the email. Adam writes in with a 5-star review saying, I really look forward to listening to the show every week. It is the only show that I listen to every week. I really love the show's humor, insight, and how the show keeps me up to date on all things gaming. The review summaries really help me decide what games I want to try. Between the show, site, and magazine, I have everything I need to stay up to date on the hobby I love. Thank you, and everyone be well. Well, thank you so much, Adam. We appreciate you making sure that we saw that.
I was to say that was almost infringement though when you said all things gaming, because my podcast is all things Nintendo. So
yeah,
be careful.
we had to almost take you down, Adam.
It is funny though, because I was actually at Bandai Namco, and I was talking to one of their employees about like while we had some downtime. So when I was playing Tekken 8, and they were asking like, oh, like I was like, oh yeah, I have a podcast about Nintendo, and she was like, oh, what is like? It's just like about like the games, about like the people, or is it just kind of like about like all things Nintendo? And I was like, well, you got it right there, because it's literally called All Things Nintendo.
That's really funny.
That was a fun little moment. But yeah, Tekken 8 also very good. We didn't talk about that.
Well, how about right now? Why not?
No time like the present. So
yeah, in the middle of housekeeping.
Yeah, sorry. I'm keeping this house, the King of the Iron. I don't know what I was going with that, but I was trying to find some sort of tenuous connection, and the bridge just collapsed.
That's fair.
But yeah, I went to Irvine. I was not on the show because I was in Los Angeles, but I went to Irvine, California the week before my Los Angeles trip.
Oh my gosh.
Visited Bandai Namco. I've been bouncing around a lot, and I've got another trip coming up here in a couple weeks. So I will be on the road once again, but Irvine, California to visit Bandai Namco. While I was out there, I did see Alex Stadnik and Daniel Tack, which was very fun.
I saw that photo. I was envious.
Yeah, it was great seeing them, but I also got to see Michael Murray and Katsuhiro Harada, who are the producer and executive producer of Tekken 8, respectively. And I got to sit down with them for 30 minutes and interview them. You can watch that video on the Game Informer YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. And I got to play Tekken 8 for, I want to say, like 3 or 4 hours. And it's a really fun game. It's they basically took Tekken 7 and they were like, let's basically improve this game, but also make it so it's like focused around aggression. Like that's the theme that they are going for this time. So like they want you to be kind of more in your face. Like they don't want you to be defensive. They don't want you to kind of turtle up. They want you to, like, if there's an opportunity to hit your opponent, they want you to take it. And they've given you so many different tools to do so. It's been a minute, so I'm going to open up my notes here. But like there's like the heat system. There is the rage system, which comes back from Tekken 7, and it's kind of the evolution of that. So the rage system is like if you get like low on health, you can initiate a rage art, which is basically a super powerful move that does more damage based on how little health you have. So like the less health you have, the more damage this does. but you have to land it, and
that's gonna equate to some really sick plays.
Right. And so once you reach a certain health threshold, you can activate this. But again, the lower your health is, the more damage it does. So like you kind of want to have that balancing act of a risk reward. And that's really fun. And then the heat system, you can activate that. I think it's once per round. And that allows you to just do different abilities with like more damage. And then there's also a special heat attack that you can do that allows you to like do a lot of damage as well, and they're both cinematic, both the rage art and the heat attack.
Okay.
And then there's also the recoverable gauge. Like they're trying to make it so there's as many kind of tools in play to keep it so like even if a character gets off to a really great start, the other fighter has a chance to come back pretty well. Like so there's also the recoverable gauge where it's like, you know, as you get hit, your health starts depleting, but there's a segment of the health bar that remains white. And instead of just like turtling it up to recover that segment, you get recovery based on if you do damage. So if you hit your opponents, this is all plays into that theme of aggression. So like say Alex hits me like 12 times and I have my health bar depletes a lot, but there's still that white gauge left. In other fighting games, basically if you just turtle up, you'll slowly recover that health over time. But if you in Tekken 8, they want you to actually be aggressive, so you recover health based in that white space based on if you hit your opponent. So, and it's not like significant recovery, but like it's something. And you know, in some of the matches I had, each round came down to a sliver of health, so like every little bit helps. So it's and it's also a gorgeous game. Like they had, you know, they have Unreal Engine 5 for the first time. And this is also the first time they're developing for PS5 and Xbox Series X. And the particle effects are terrific. The stages are so dense with detail, and the character like facial animations in particular are just next level. So I'm looking forward to getting more hands-on time with this. And if you want, like the interview that I did with Harte and Michael Murray were more conceptual, I think, than like, hey, tell me about Tekken 8. It was kind of like talking about like the state of fighting games, the state of 3D fighting games in particular. So I'd recommend seeking that out. Like it was a good interview. They had good answers, and they seem like they kind of they understand the place that Tekken holds in this industry, and they understand like what players want. So definitely go check that out and hear what they had to say.
That's awesome. Yeah. YouTube.com/Game Informer. We've had like several good Brian Shea interviews up on the YouTube channel as of late.
And also GameInformer.com. You can go read right now my interview, not video, but you can go read my interview with Shigeru Miyamoto and Koji Kondo about the Mario movie. And I also talked to them a little bit about how their collaboration has evolved over the years, because, you know, they've been working together for about 38 years now. So it's interesting to hear these two legends talk about what they like, what the process of making a movie from their perspective of, you know, almost 4 decades of making games. And then on top of that, like how they work together as a kind of a long-standing collaborator or collaboration team.
38 years. That's so long.
It really is.
That's older than all of us on this podcast, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Shout out to Adam's review, because they really were like, man, I love the show so much. And then we were like, what about Encore? What if we kept going? What if we had a secret little, you want to hear about new games? Well, we also went to Tekken. Like that was
Well, I started telling that anecdote about the All Things Nintendo because he said All Things Gaming, and then I was like, wait, I was never on this show to talk about Tekken 8, so I should probably bring that up, because I've just been traveling so much, things kind of got blurred in my memory.
Well, Housekeeping Part 2 continues. Housekeeping Redux.
I'll think of a way to interrupt this one.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Then we'll get to Housekeeping Exodus. Social media plugs for the week. Go and follow these lovely gentlemen. Follow Charles at ChuckDuck365. Follow Brian Shea on Instagram at Brian P. Shea. And you can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at It's Van Aken. Of course, go and follow Game Informer on all of those channels as well. We have a great social team that is well, we have a great team that also doubles as a social media team that puts a lot of thought and effort into that.
And also
Yeah.
Kyle Hilliard is running our TikTok channel.
Yeah, doing a great job as well. So shout out to all those people. Go follow us on all the social medias. We're there. And of course, go and listen to our other podcast that comes out every single Friday, All Things Nintendo, of course, hosted by Brian Shea. And yeah, we've got one more thing to get to. We had a listener question in the Discord. Normally you can if you want to be part of the show, you can send us your questions via email at podcast@gameinformer.com, or if you're a part of the Game Informer official community Discord, which you get access to by subscribing to us on Twitch, then you can ask your question in the Game Informer show Discord section of our main Discord. But yeah, this is the part of the show where you influence what we talk about, just like JHerb24 does this week, who asks, what will it take for VR to get more mainstream appeal and sales? What's the biggest barrier right now, in your opinion? Is it price, lack of unique and compelling experiences, hassle of setup? I know personally, I wish PlayStation's units were as easy to access and play wireless as Quest. I'm just not really that into supporting Zucker meta. Do you guys have any thoughts on VR? I feel like I went through a phase where I was really interested in VR, and I'm still interested by it, but I am not necessarily interested or as interested in being a active participant of it. I do think like the stuff that companies are doing is really cool. And I like seeing when videos pop across my timeline about it. But I feel like the last VR game I really played and loved was Half-Life Alyx. That game was an experience that I kind of regret sometimes that I haven't played it again, because it's just so good. But it's kind of like the needle in the haystack, right? There's a bunch of talented devs out there putting out VR experiences, but few of them are as comprehensive as something like a Half-Life Alyx. Not to discredit what they're doing, it's just like, what are you buying a headset for, right? It's those really big experiences. I think for most people, at least.
And that's the thing, right? Is like, this is still very nascent technology, where we're still figuring out how to implement the best practices, or even what the best practices are. Like, I feel like companies are just now starting to crack the code of how do you move around in VR without making the user projectile vomit. And that is something that's ultimately going to lead to better games, but it's still something that a lot of developers are working on figuring out. And because of that, like the technology is progressing faster than the best practices are. So it's like, all right, the PlayStation VR 2 headset seems like it's a pretty great headset, and the Quest is awesome, and it seems like there's a lot of really awesome hardware, but the software hasn't really kept up with it in terms of like the depth anyway. Like, there are some great games out there, as you said, but it's a giant ocean of games, and only a few drops of that ocean are really, really awesome experiences that are worth dropping all that money for a headset. And not to mention, I don't know about you, but like for me, when I'm done working and I'm ready to play a video game, the last thing I want to do is strap something on my face and have a screen a couple inches away from my eyes. Like, that just doesn't feel relaxing to me. Like, I have a PlayStation VR, and I used it pretty heavily in the first months, but I just stopped using it eventually. And also, like, it is a pain to get it all kind of set up, and it's like I got to calibrate every single time I put it on. And maybe that's changed with the PSVR too, but I just haven't had any experience with that yet. And that's ultimately what has turned me off from it, is like, I just want to sit on my couch. I want to be able to, like, when there's a loading screen, I want to check my phone. I don't want to like just have to stare into the void as you do when you have a VR headset. I know some of them have like pass-through cameras or whatever, but like, I don't know, it just doesn't feel relaxing to me, which is ultimately why I game. Like, sure, there's some times where it's like I'm like super tense when I'm gaming or whatever, but like usually it's to unwind after a day of work.
Yeah, my thing is the motion sickness of it. I'm unfortunately prone to motion sickness in VR, and it as much fun as Half-Life Alyx was to play, I would take the headset off just feeling crummy, at crummy at best, incredibly nauseous, and feeling like I'm gonna vomit at worst. It's just, I feel like we're the human, as cool as the tech is, I feel like we weren't built to have that tech strapped to our face for hours on end. As much as I wish we were, I feel like you're kind of always rubbing up against that a little bit. At least if you're like me and you're plagued by the motion sickness of it. But
also, I was also there's a segment of it where I feel like we've exited, and this is not meaning to discount people who love VR, but I feel like we've exited kind of the era of peripherals, where it's like, we had Guitar Hero, we had DJ Hero, we had all these, like the Wii Fit balance board, the Wii itself, where it had like a billion different accessories and peripherals, and that was kind of like cool in that moment. But now it's like almost like minimalism is like the current cool, where it's like, all right, you have a controller, you have a system that usually isn't even visible, or it's not like prominently displayed unless it's the Series X, which doesn't fit into any entertainment console. But it's like, I don't want like I don't know. When I had my VR headset out, I always kind of like hid it off to the side. I didn't really want it like sitting out and like being like a prominent part of the living room. It was always just kind of like all right, let me open up my drawer where I have my VR headset hidden, and I have to go and plug it all in and everything. And that was kind of a pain. And it's like, for a lot of these headsets anyway, there's not really an elegant way to display it. And I think that's also a big part of it.
Yeah, I as my confession, I actually did VR for the first time like a few months ago, just because I had never had the opportunity to. I played Beat Saber, which I think is like the game you should play.
Oh, it's amazing.
The first time. Yeah. It was great. It was awesome. I felt like a very cool person. It was like Star Wars: The Force Unleashed. I was dual wielding lightsabers.
I'm sure you looked like a very cool person too, for people watching.
Definitely. But yeah, and I think the reason I haven't done it before is like I think the biggest hurdle is also just still the price, because it's very expensive. It's expensive on top of like PSVR 2 is. Correct me if I'm wrong, more expensive than a PlayStation 5, which is hard enough to get your hands on. And just, I think it's also a thing of like, we're talking about like what the good games are on there. But if VR was more accessible, it wouldn't feel as much like we have to have a big ticket, like tech selling game, like if, and not to say, VR headsets are going to be like $30 in a month or whatever, but like, I think there would be less pressure for it to be like, well, what's the game that's going to make everyone buy VR? If the entry level there was lower, then we would be able to have more like, I don't know, mediocre experiences without it feeling like, man, this was a waste of time, a waste of money.
Well, thank you for that question, J Herb. We appreciate it. If you're listening and you want to submit your question for the show, of course, email us podcast@gameinformer.com or leave a question in the Discord. Don't forget to follow these guys again on social media. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.